With the NFL preseason being underway and almost over, there have been a lot of videos and player breakdowns discussing how the rookie quarterbacks have played in the first 5 games, and that makes a lot of sense given that there were 5 drafted in the first 15 picks. Now, with that being said, there's also a lot of other parts of football that have not been discussed, and today is one of them, and we are going to be discussing some of the most underrated players heading into the 2021 season. And although I usually do not focus around fantasy football, today will be a more fantasy football based video, and we are going to be discussing several players that I do think will outperform their current expectations, and I am going to be using the rankings from ESPN.com fantasy football. So if you are wondering why this player is ranked 34th or this player is ranked 17th and it should be top 10, that is why. Now, one subscriber commented, "Hey man, I love your videos, and one request, can you do a video of NFL players that will have a breakout year?" And I watched your video last year and picked both Allen and Diggs, as you predicted Allen having a breakout 3rd year and everything else. Love your videos, so I do appreciate the support. And I always comment at the end of videos, if you ever have a video suggestion, please let me know, and Jose's comment is the reason for today's video. So without further ado, we are going to dive into some of the most underrated players heading into the 2021 season. The first player we are going to discuss is Bengals receiver Tyler Boyd, as ESPN has him rated as the 35th best receiver in their fantasy projections for the 2021 season, and a big reason why I strongly disagree with that is in Tyler's games when Joe Burrow played last year, he had a 69, 710, and 3 stat line, which, by the way, if you read the bottom, he was on pace for a 110 catch, 1100 yard, 5 touchdown year. Now, admittedly, the touchdowns aren't exactly where you'd like them to be on that type of volume, but to suggest Tyler simply will not receive targets like this just because Jamar Chase is there is not something I agree with, because Joe Burrow time and time again showed that he liked to throw the ball to Tyler Boyd, and they have a good chemistry together, and all of a sudden, just because Jamar is there does not mean that will go out the window. And if anything, I do think it will only improve Tyler Boyd, because opposing NFL defensive coordinators obviously know about Jamar Chase. Everyone knows about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and what they did in the 2019 LSU season, but they do not realize that that's going to focus in on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for that matter, leaving Tyler Boyd one-on-one with a lot of players, and he will simply feast, especially in the early part of the 2021 season, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for Tyler to start the 2021 campaign with 2 out of 3 100-yard games to start the year. Now, Tyler, will he be a 1,500-yard player ever in his career? Probably not, but to suggest he is the 35th best receiver in 2021 fantasy is simply not realistic. And obviously, after Joe Burrow got injured, the targets and the numbers went way down, as in 5 games after he got hurt, he had just 23 targets and 10 receptions for the remainder of the year, which was obviously a very disappointing finish to the very impressive start that he had, as he was on pace for over 105 receptions. Next is Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears, and Cole Kmet was widely regarded as the best tight end prospect in the 2020 draft class, and there was a considerable margin between him and the second best tight end. However, Cole's career didn't exactly get off to the best start, as in the first 11 games, he had just 14 targets, and obviously most of the time, Cole being no exception here. Receivers and tight ends, for that matter, do not catch every target thrown their way, so in the first 11 games of his career, he had 8 catches for just 94 yards. However, he finished the year on a very good streak with 30 targets for 20 catches and over a 16-game season. That would be a 64-catch, 477-yard stat line, and Cole only averaged 7.4 yards per reception during those last 5 games. But what I am after here, and why I think it matters most in terms of his second year, is the targets. If a player simply does not get targets, especially at the receiver position, then they cannot be productive, but Cole was receiving consistent targets, and Cole receiving what would be near, based on a 5-game pace, of 100 targets over a 16-game season, let alone a 17-game season, is enough for me to think he will take a second-year leap. And not only that, outside of Allen Robinson, the Bears receivers are not exactly all that good, not to say they're atrocious, because they are not, but I do think Cole Kmet will have a big second-year leap, similar to what TJ Hawkinson had in his second year. And as we know with tight ends, generally rookies do not produce very well. Hopefully Kyle Pitts will be be an exception to that, but Cole Kmet was not, as he had a 28-catch, 243-yard rookie season, but I do think he is in for a big year number 2, and how that will fare on the stat sheet is probably something along the lines of 60 to 70 catches with 500 to 700 yards and probably 6 to 8 touchdowns to go along with that. So that would be quite the upgrade from the 28, 243, and 2 stat line in his rookie season, and as of now, the 20th ranked tight end on ESPN's fantasy website. The next person that we have that is very underrated heading into the 2021 season is Detroit Lions running back DAndre Swift. DAndre Swift was a lot of draft analysts' running back 1 in the 2020 draft, which featured players like Jonathan Taylor, who by the way had a 1,200-yard rookie year, and Antonio Gibson, who was pretty successful in his own rights for the Washington football team. Now, a reason why I like DAndre Swift so much heading into this year is because of the offensive philosophy that Dan Campbell is implementing. He has said multiple times, and we all know of his legendary press conferences, at least we hope they become legendary and that he becomes a successful coach, but about biting kneecaps off and everything, and to me that screams grit, and that screams running the football. And DAndre Swift only had 114 carries in year number 1, which by the way will increase a lot, as that averages less than 10 carries per game. So with the increased workload, and by the way, Detroit's offensive line is very good, as it consists of players like Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, and of course Penei Sewell. And even though Penei Sewell has struggled a little bit to start his rookie year, it is the preseason, and that's what I want to reiterate most. Now, I don't think Penei Sewell will be a complete bust because of 2 preseason games, and I want that reiterated most. But another thing that favors DAndre Swift is having TJ Hockenson out there. If there's one thing we know about Iowa tight ends, think TJ Hockenson, think George Kittle, it is that they love to block and they know how to block. So in a sense, there is a 6th offensive lineman out there for Swift, and although the Lions will probably be behind in a lot of games, Swift still gets a fair amount of receiving targets, and I do think he is in for a big 2021, and I think he is much better and will finish much better than the 19th running back in the NFL. And the next player we go to is Browns receiver Odell Beckham, and it is crazy to see how far we've come that Odell Beckham can now be considered underrated, and for that to be in the same sentence actually makes sense. But yes, Odell is ranked on ESPN as the 26th best receiver heading into the year with standard scoring, and although Odell did not have the best year before he tore his ACL last year, he had back-to-back 1,000-yard years leading up to that. But the one thing that I want to say about Odell is there should be no surprise that him and Baker struggled to start the year last year, especially in a new offense with Kevin Stefanski. One thing I do think that benefits Odell Beckham is Stefanski's offense is very versatile, and even with players like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt getting carries, Baker Mayfield still throws the ball a considerable amount, and Stefanski has coached both Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs before, and not to compare the duos between them two and Jarvis and Odell, but what I'm saying and why this is important to Beckham's fantasy status and his 2021 statistical campaign is these guys can coexist. It's not like they're going to be pulling Kevin aside and say, look, we cannot coexist, you have to feed me the ball or otherwise I'm going to demand a trade. It's not like that, and for Beckham to be ranked the 26th best receiver heading into 2021, assuming he stays healthy of course, to me is downright absurd, and I 100% think he will outplay the expectations heading into this year. Now, 3 last players I do want to highlight. Quarterback Kirk Cousins being ranked the 22nd best quarterback, despite last year he only had 3 passing touchdowns less than Patrick Mahomes. I don't think Kirk is the 22nd best fantasy quarterback for this year. Carson Wentz being ranked 28th was also a bit of a surprise. Granted, he could miss a couple of games, so if that was factored in, I understand that, but I do think Carson will improve much beyond the player we saw in 2020, and J.K. Dobbins being ranked directly below DAndre Swift at 19. I do think both of those guys can finish the 2021 season as top 10 running backs. Now, with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you ever have a video suggestion, please comment below. Shout out Jose for today's video, and until next time, have a great day. Love you guys. Deuces. Peace.